Okay. Yeah, I think we can get started. Thanks everyone for joining on Saturday evening. Welcome to this second session of SS Agile Gurus, where Balram will be taking a good session on estimation. As most of the people know, sometimes people struggle to find the right ways to do the estimations and all, right? So that's why, as part of our first session, based on the feedback from the audience, we have taken up this topic. So with this, I want to hand it over to Balram. Even though he is struggling with health issues and all because of fever, he accepted our request warmly and want to move forward. So Balram, it's all over to you. Balram, we can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Sharath, and good evening, everybody. Very warm welcome to all of you to this session. And here we go with second session of Agile, Gurus. And like Sharath did mention, we had feedback for this topic, and whatever I could in my capacity of knowledge, I have put it here to help you guys. And before we get started with the session, I hope everybody is clearly able to hear me. Am I audible? Yes,
Yes,
no?
please go ahead.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so yeah, as you might be seeing here, this is how I look. Unfortunately, I cannot turn on the camera today because my laptop is dead and my desktop does not have a camera option. Right, I have to just show you my picture which I picked it, from LinkedIn profile. So my name is Balram Choudry, and I'm currently working as a Scrum Master at Anthem, which recently, rebranded as 11's Health, and now Legato is a part of subsidiary at Hyderabad for Anthem Incorporation, and I work there as a Scrum Master. And coming to my brief intro, I have over 14 years of experience in total. I'm a simple BCom and MBA guy. I don't have any fancy degrees from IIM or IIT. And I started my career back in 2008, and then started with the Bank of America, worked there for 6 years. Then I moved on to Amazon. Then I worked there, as a training manager, trainer, then Scrum Master. I got certified on the Train the Trainer, program. Then from there, I had opportunity to internally take up the role of a Scrum Master, then moved on to Legato. Now I'm working here at Legato as a Scrum Master. So I'm basically from Karnataka. I studied hardcore Kannada medium school when I was in village, and then we had let me tell you a little bit about the story of estimations, relating it to my grandfather and my my journey with my grandfather. Then I will let you know how it actually relates to estimations. So this is briefly about myself, and I enjoy reading books, mainly the suspense thriller books. And in my free time, I do watch movies whenever time permits me. Apart from that, I play most of the time with my kid. I have a 6 years old daughter. I'm married. I am settled in Hyderabad. Well,
Balram, sorry to interrupt you. Can you make me co-host?
definitely. Give me a minute. I'm not sure if it will allow me to make you co-host. I can directly make you host. It will take away my screen sharing option.
Acha, acha. Acha, Balganesh, can you please go on mute?
I will mute.
Yeah,
Okay.
Balganesh,
Give me a minute.
please go ahead.
Just right. Thank you. Okay, let's get started with estimations. Ever since the introduction of Agile, right, estimations are trickiest part of it. You agree or you don't agree, you always see people estimating things. I will do it in 2 days. Then when you ask someone, did you get your item ready for the testing, they say no, something else is pending, right? So if you start reflecting on what had gone wrong in planning part, most of the times we estimate without knowing the scope of the complexity, amount of the work, and many more things are there. While I want to get into the topic, but before that I will tell you a small story, where I would like to bring in my grandfather also. His name is Chandulal, and he is no more. He passed away in 2014. But when I was a kid, I used to take a walk with him, whenever he used to go out and buy the groceries for our grocery shop. So we did not have a bus. We used to walk 3 kilometers. Then there were from my village there were three different bus stops connected. So each has a different distance. Right. When I used to go with my grandpa, it used to take me 30 minutes. When I used to go with my dad, it used to take around 20 minutes. So 10 minutes difference. Right. Sometimes I used to go with some, a neighbor or somebody else. Then it used to take some more time. So now, if you look at the three dimensions of this journey, each each bus stop or each distance would take a different time to walk and reach the destination. Right. That day, whenever people would ask me, okay, how much time does it take for you to reach uh, your bus stop, I would say, are you asking me if I how much time does it take when I walk with my dad or when I walk with my grandpa? So the time used to be different. So this is where the trick is. When you are doing estimations, you need to always be mindful of the parties involved. When I say parties involved, the teammates and their capacity. Before we get there, let me brief you about the objectives of this session. The agenda of this session is not to really get a deep dive into the estimations, rather understanding how you can help as a Scrum Master for your team members to estimate better. Right. Now the objectives are here. This session will help you to understand the estimations, and it will also help you to understand how the estimations are actually in picture and why they are so important. And finally, you will learn how to help your team to do the estimations. Let me now move to the next slide. How do you actually help your team? How do you help your team? There are multiple ways. Right. When a story is ready, or even before the story is ready, you have to first make sure there are some ground rules that are in place. The first point here is, before you start estimations, you have to understand what is your team composition. Does it involve senior people? Does it involve only freshers? What is the technology they are doing, dealing with? What is the competency that they are bringing on the table? Right. And what is their exposure for the agile? Not everybody is exposed to agile way of working. Right. And sometimes estimations may not be available in some of the non-agile functioning teams. Right. They would randomly give the number of days, and they would want the delivery to take place. When you focus on these three aspects of your team, the team composition and their background, experience, and technology, you will be able to understand the training needs of your team. Where exactly you need to start giving the training. Truth, can you? Yeah, I just muted Truth. Right. When you try to do all this exercise, you will be able to understand what exactly is needed by your team, where they need to be trained. Let's say, for example, if your team is not exposed on agile, you can definitely plan for agile estimation training workshop. If your team is let's say, if half of the population of your team is really new to the agile team, they moved from a non agile team to agile team, waterfall to agile, you can definitely have the training sessions conducted. When you understand the training needs, you will also groom them in a way where they get little closer to estimations. Now it does not really help them. Okay, there is there is more to it when you want to help your team on estimation. Sometimes your team might know how to estimate, but they may not be sure, and they may not have actually worked on the story that they are dealing with. Right now, coming to before I get into seasoned team and the new team part, let's take an example of a story where your team has already worked. Right. For example, you wanted to develop a functionality. I will take the example of Amazon, where we have all of us use Amazon application, right? The moment you click on add to cart, right, the item that you have selected will go and gets placed in add to cart, the cart option. How many of would know how much time it takes to build that feature? So when we were developing the application, when I was a part of Amazon team, one of our architects said that that functionality is actually going to take not less than 2 story points of effort, because it does not really link between multiple data points. There means you don't have any external source system to capture the details, you don't have any API calls happening, you don't have multiple technologies involved there. It's a simple internal drag. You have to just bridge the gap, and that will take care. I did not understand the technical terminology. See, I am not going to understand all this. Can you help me? Is it going to take more time or less time? He said it will take not more than 2 days. And that's how he ended up delivering. And then the things evolved, and we went in a different direction. The idea of sharing uh, the development part of add to cart button was to tell you that sometimes functionality might actually look very easy to develop, but the complexity involved within the functionality can be huge. Right, what always appears to be big may not be always complex. It can be easier one. It is only when you look at the story you will be able to understand. Therefore, there are techniques that are used. Now, how exactly as a Scrum Master can you facilitate the estimations? You are not going to give your opinion. There is difficulty, right? You cannot say, okay, if you are giving 8 story points, why don't you just go ahead and make it 5 story points? It's not possible. Right, technically as a Scrum Master you may not be aware, so it's your team who has to make a decision, and you have to facilitate that. How do you do that? Through planning poker. Right, and this is the game. This is where exactly many teams fail, and out of 100 or 10 teams you take, many people fail to implement planning poker effectively. How does that happen? There are some bad practices in agile teams. Let's say, for example, there is a tech lead and there are 5 stories. If we have 10 people in the team, only tech lead is consulted to give the estimation on development. And if there is test lead, only test lead is consulted to give the estimation on testing. Now, the exposure for the other 8 members is gone. This is one of the practices that are that is existing. But as a Scrum Master, the moment you notice, you should interfere and start facilitating the planning poker. And the way it has to happen is here. Before we get into planning poker, remember these last 2 points here. Seasoned team, if your team is already existing without any changes in team composition, you should always use velocity approach. And if there is a new team, if you have a newly formed team where agile implementation may be happening for the first time, go with capacity approach and always keep a buffer of 50%. You never know how the new team will deliver. Here is the main discussion point for this session. Anyone who thinks of planning poker would think that I will just go ahead and select the choice by the maximum number of people. If you look at the picture here, you will be able to see there are three people who have chosen story point 3 for one story, and two people have chosen differently. Did you notice that? If you have noticed it, please raise your hand. Now, is it really true that all these three people can be saying or doing the right estimation? Not necessarily, right? When you do the planning poker, there are multiple versions of planning poker or multiple revisions that you might need to do. So as a scrum master, the practice that I follow in my team is, let's give them a story. Let's have a story that is to be estimated. Let them decide, okay, with the knowledge that they have, with the exposure and the past experience of working on a similar story, let them make a choice on estimation. And until then, do not flip the cards. Now, magic is here. What do you think can happen if one person says, I think this is going to be 5 stories? Even before you start planning poker, if somebody says this story is going to be 5 story points, don't you think the rest of the crowd will also five? I think it is going to be five only. Yes, yes, yes. Even I think it is going to be 5 story points only. This herd mentality will be continued in the team also. Therefore, the system of planning poker was devised by James Grenning, because he was a very smart man. Now, how exactly will you do? Let's say the person who is sitting in the middle, who has 5 story points, he has accountability to explain why he thought it is going to be 5 story points. What is the logic? What is his thought process? What complexity did he think of? Right? He would be giving his perspective of estimation by considering the volume of the work, the complexity of the work, and the depth involved in coding or whatever functionality that is going to be built. Right? Now, when you switch the gear to person on the right side who is giving 3, he would be doing the same. He will go ahead and explain to the team that he thought of these many steps involved in developing a story. Therefore, as per him, it is going to be 3 story points. So this brainstorming session has to happen, and each of the member who has given the story points differently has to give their perspective of estimation. When they are not on the right side of estimation, if the consensus is not achieved, they are going to again re-estimate everything. So you will again rerun the planning poker, asking them to re-estimate everything. Now that the discussion has happened, right? So here, if you look at a person sitting in the middle, he gave his perspective. Then the other person shared some more details. Then third person also shared some more details. This way, entire team got the visibility of the complexity of the story, right? The vastness involved in the development of the story, or the amount of the work involved in the story. That will give the complete visibility to the team how to start thinking. When they again re-evaluate the estimation, they might consider some data points shared through that brainstorming session. Now, is it possible that in one brainstorming session that is going to be giving us the right estimation? Not necessary, right? They might again give a different ballpark number or different estimation. So till the time everybody comes to a common agreement, till the time everybody is reaching the consensus, you will continue to do the planning poker. And make sure, initially it might take more time. Okay, when you are doing it for the first time, it might take more time. But as your team gets used to these kind of discussions on a regular basis, planning poker is not going to take more time. One story the minimum time that you should be spending on one story is 5 when you have the team which knows how to do the estimation. All you need to do is facilitate this brainstorming discussion. Otherwise, people will just go with what is being said by tech lead or somebody who is senior in the team. As a scrum master, you cannot suppress the idea of a junior member. Maybe he brings in more thought processes. Maybe his perspective is more valuable than a senior person. Just because somebody is senior, we cannot title that guy knows everything, right? So as a scrum master, you are going to be a bridge in the understanding of the estimations for the entire team. You may not directly be involved, but you will lead these discussions. You will facilitate these discussions. When the consensus are reached, that's when you will see a story estimated with certain story points. It could be 5, or it could be 3, or it could be 8, whatever it is. Now, can we be sure it is the fixed estimation? Are we going to call it as a definite estimation or absolute estimation? It's not. Estimations are always relative, right? Plus 1 or minus 1, right? These are approximations that we are calculating to deliver the story. We are not going to differentiate accurately with the measure of all the units involved there. Can I request people to go on mute, whoever is on not on mute? Just a minute. Just a minute. Let
Even
me
you
check.
mute them.
And yeah,
I think Sridhar, yeah.
yeah, right. So now, how do you actually uh, face your team when they are not willing to really share their ideas on estimations? Planning poker is one of the finest activities that you will be conducting, and this activity needs to be facilitated in an interesting way by encouraging people to share their ideas. And as a scrum master, you will be doing that, and therefore this game is very, very popular among all the scrum teams when they are doing the estimations, right? Now, uh, there could be another challenge here. What is another challenge? How do you estimate some of the stories which are very complex in nature? Let's say, for example, if I go back to my previous slide, here I have a box here, right? So if you look at the smaller box and the box next to it, it is 2 times bigger, right? Now, if the smaller box is estimated at 3 story points here, can you really make it as 6, considering the size of the box is twice the size of smaller one? But we don't have 6 in estimations. Fibonacci series does not have the 6. It is 3, 5, and then 8. Therefore, here we may go with 5. Again, what do you do with one story pointer? This is consumed with an assumption that this is going to be an approximation of the estimation. Therefore, we never rely on accuracy completely. It's not going to be a unit level measure. It is going to be a high level estimate which is relative in nature. Let's say, for example, if you see a house, a small house and a big house, you will be able to immediately understand, right, which one is bigger and which one is smaller. Similarly, this is how we need to be thinking, and all the calculations that need to go, they always carry a sense or a dose of guesswork, and the guesswork is coming through empirical model. Now, I cannot really say it is going to be a guesswork, because empirical model always talks about how much you have worked on a particular story of a similar nature, and what your past experience says. How much time did you consume in delivering it? If your team composition is not changed for a long time, it means your team has spent sufficient time on working on a particular product and number of stories. Now, take back, can you go back to a reference story, right? Let's say, for example, if you have 10 stories, you must encourage your team to always refer to a story which is going to be a reference point. And in comparison to that story, whatever other stories are going to be estimated, what is the complexity? How complex it is? Is it easier or more difficult than the reference story? So you should always encourage your team to keep a reference story in place and encourage the team members to actively participate in planning poker. The more effectively you drive the planning poker activity, the more accurately you will be able to estimate. And when you are, I'm not going to say that estimates are always going to be 100% accurate. There could be uh, changes in the estimates, but if you are confident on your estimation levels, if your confidence is high on your team's estimations, it indicates that you are going to deliver it without any spillovers. The bad estimations are always the cause for the spillovers most of the times. If you go back and ask the team member, why did you not tell this is going to be tough one when you chose it for the sprint backlog? They might say, no, I thought it was easy, then I realized it is going to be difficult. So what happened? Why did you get the realization in the middle? Right? Maybe as a scrum master, we did not drive the discussion effectively. Right? So people always have the tendency to realize things when the sprint has started. So you have to drive the people to come across those realizations by heavily driving the planning poker. And trust me, as a scrum master, when you do take care of all these things, you will see less spillovers, more accurate delivery, and under commitment and over delivery will be visible within your team. Right? The question will come on scrum master, what are you doing in helping your team to plan the things better? You may not be directly giving them the ideas. Not every scrum master is technically uh, going to be contributing. Let's say, for example, even if I am a um technically good guy, maybe my technology knowledge is limited to SAP or .NET or Java. What if my team is working on big data? What if my team is working on machine learning? Right? So the technology stack of your team can always change. So do not have an assumption that if you are not technically sound, you may not be really able to help the team. All you need is the basics of agile have to be followed. As a scrum master, if you encourage your team for following the planning poker, I think that will take care of estimations. And the way you have to do is encouraging team members to actively participate and give their thoughts and their perspective on complexity and the volume of the work. So now I know this is what I wanted to share. The more interesting part is now question and answer session. I we can Sharath, we can open the QA session now for the people to ask and clarify their doubts. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Balram. Yeah, you're opening for Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please go ahead and get started. Yeah, Balganesh, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Sharath. Yeah. Hi, Balram.
Hey, hi, Balganesh.
Yeah, it's a nice session. Thanks for organizing this.
No problem, please tell me.
Actually, can we, if we come across the situation wherein, okay, we understood now the estimate is completely wrong. So rather than waiting at the end of the sprint, okay, can we change in the middle? If so, If not, why we can't change the estimates in the middle?
Okay, so point number one is how does it help you to change the estimation? Complexity will not be reduced, right? Changing the estimation will only reduce the number.
Yes.
It will not reduce the complexity involved. Any which way you will have to deliver the complex work, right? But here is the catch. When you are trying to reduce the scope, you have to maybe depends on your team, right? As a scrum master, I would definitely not let the team to reduce the estimation or increase the story points in the middle of the sprint, right? Rather, for the next sprint, take it as a discussion item to avoid such a repetition. In the retrospective meeting, you can definitely go back and put this point very clearly. We did uh, wrong things in estimation in the earlier sprint on so and so story. Let's make sure that whatever we're estimating is at least good enough. I'm not going to say it has. See, estimation cannot be, let's say, if the story is estimated as 8 story points, for example, and if it is only 2 story points effort, right? It's a very wrong estimation. And if it is if the effort needed is worth 8 story points, if you estimate it as 2, again that's a wrong estimation. Either way, you are going to neither reduce the complexity nor increase your capacity. So look, reflecting back on your past, you have to always avoid that practice for your future sprint. That's the only way. And you can always if there are questions from leadership, I would always document them and keep them ready on what has happened, and you can always make these data points as discussion points for your grooming sessions and retrospective sessions.
Okay. I mean, see, for example, if that variation is there, we estimated it as 2,
Hmm.
but actually it is 8. So even if that will be clearly visible in the burn-up chart, right? So that stakeholders also will be coming to know, okay, there might be a delay in this particular story. So isn't it useful that way? So if I increase the estimate, so the transparency will be more, and also it's a particular the developers also would be a bit I mean they will be true to the point in the fact that they okay, their efforts are being visible rather than just trying to suppress the effort.
What you said is right. Okay, if a story point is more if the effort is more, if the given story points are less, you can always increase, right? And if
Okay.
the effort is already estimated high,
Hmm.
okay,
Yeah.
if you try to reduce it, then it will give a different picture,
Exactly. Yeah. So
right?
we can, if the gap is more, you are saying that it's fine to increase in middle.
Yeah, but again, depends on the practices, right? So
Yeah.
you can make the changes. The Jira or any estimation tool will not stop you from not making the changes.
Hmm.
But as a scrum master, you can take a call. You can take a call not to make changes, or to make changes and have the justification written down. And true picture, like you said, can come from directly on the burn down chart.
Okay. So then what about Balram? So for example, if there is an 8 story point and I think it got carried to the next sprint because of some portion of work was not done.
Hmm.
So I see in real time many teams they will change the estimate. Okay, and okay, only 2 story point work is pending, so that they will change the estimate before the next sprint starts,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they will plan as per the capacity. So is this a good recommendation, or is there any pitfall? Can you please elaborate here?
Uh, See, if the effort is more, definitely the part of the effort will be spilled over to the next story, next
Sprint, yeah.
sprint.
Mm.
Now, it is your choice whether you want to wrap up everything within the sprint and make the team aware that we are not going to make the changes, and we will continue. However, if you make the changes here, I think as a Scrum Master, I will definitely not be in in favor of making the changes. I would rather tell the team this is not a true picture of the story. I will keep that story as a reference point for them to not estimate in a bad way. Rather, if they want to if a team member wants to create another story, another task for the spilled over part of work, they have to give the justification why it was calculated incorrectly earlier. So Balganesh, the
Mm.
practices are different for each Scrum Master and each Scrum team, right? Sometimes even I have seen people making changes. Trust me, it will lead into a bad agile practice, and it will also develop a habit of making frequent changes in the middle of the sprint.
Yeah.
So think in a long-term perspective, Balganesh. Let's say, for example, if you allow changes, don't you think team will build a mindset that okay, we can estimate incorrectly any which way Balram or Balganesh is going to accommodate the changes in the middle. We can always go back and make the changes in the middle,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? So
Mm.
you are creating a culture of bad agile practices by allowing the changes in the middle. If if you are stabbing someone, then you cannot say I'll remove the knife and then I would say I have not stabbed, right? So once the damage is done, let the damage go over and keep that as a reference point for the future teachings. That's how I
So,
would go ahead.
yeah, Balram, Sharath here. Just want to
Yeah.
add to what you are saying.
Hmm.
Almost it's same. First of all, we need to find out why that much variation in terms of giving the story points 2 versus 8, right?
Right.
If there is some very relatively less gap, we can cope up with that, maybe 1 or 2 points. But if there is a huge variance, we need to get to the grassroots levels in
That's
terms of
that's
how
right.
we are doing the estimations.
That's
So
right.
maybe that can be discussed as part of the retrospective to see how we can better the estimations. And second thing is, yeah, whatever is fact is fact, right? We need to
Correct.
reflect the fact. And while we caution the team, as you told, someone is saying not able to hear. Yeah, others can hear.
We can hear Sharath.
Yes,
Yes,
Sharat,
yes,
we
Sharath,
can
you're
hear.
audible, Sharath. Go ahead.
Yeah. While the fact is, no, we need to increase the story points, but at the same time, we need to caution the team that how to do the better estimations, right? So we need to reflect that so that it will help us to understand the scope change also, right? If you want to reflect the scope change metrics, it will help us also how teams are estimating, and there are real dependencies which led to increasing the story points, then we have to do it. And regarding accounting the work, what we need to do is, probably you can create part A, part B, and the leftover portion can be accommodated in the next sprint, provided it gets prioritized, reprioritized. Otherwise, we have to keep that apart and move with the next set of stories. So this is my 2 cents. I want others also to add their opinions. If anyone wants to share their thoughts.
Okay,
So
so
Balram,
Sharath, you are recommending that whatever leftover portion is there, create a task for that. Okay, and then finish it off in the next sprint. Right. For now, you close that and finish it off.
Yeah, yeah. It can
Okay.
be task or story. See, usually when how I approach, in my organization is, if there are any infra related or CPNI related AppSec, application security, information security, whitelisting, whatever, those I treat as tasks. But apart from that, whatever the stories requirements that we get from business, I treat them as stories. So in my terms, whatever the additional amount of work that we found out in the middle of the sprint, I create another story, maybe as part B, and ensure that it is completed in the next. So
Okay. I
that is
mean,
how I approach today.
okay, sir. So my question is like, so for example, from the 8 story point, for testing, like few portion is pending, like it's almost done, few portion is pending. In that case, when the complete 8 story point is going to the next sprint, you mean to say we can close the current story, create one more
I would
task with whatever left over,
I
and then
would I would totally deny to that practice.
yeah.
Reason being,
Mm.
agile practice says partial completion is never a complete completion. right?
Okay.
You should never spill over, even if something if something is partially completed, let the entire story to get spilled over to the next sprint.
But the variations in the planning, it will affect, right?
it will it
That.
will it will affect, but down the line your team will hit more stability, and you will cultivate the culture of agile practices, right? You should not be thinking the short term. Okay, the impact might be there on the planning of one sprint, but down the line, people will think, the moment they think of you, they will know that you are not going to entertain such bad anti agile practices. Trust me, you are going to lead into a bad culture evolution
Okay.
there.
I totally support that, because you have your definition of done. So
Right.
if it's not done, it's not done. There is no
It's
half
not
done.
done with not correct. Half done, 10% done, 5% done. No,
Exactly.
you hit the ball to the next sprint. That's all.
Yep.
Okay. Can we move on to the next question?
Estimate Ram Piyush here. Estimations will get changed for that because something we already worked upon in the last sprint or estimation. Even for example, if we put 8,
No.
then again we will put 8.
That yeah. Again, it will continue to be 8, and the remaining effort will be completed, and then you will close the story.
Balram, Omkar this side. I have a couple of questions. Uh, so basically, when we are talking about estimations,
Hmm.
we also the first thing that I would like to understand is how do we correlate them with the capacity. So I believe a lot of us face this issue wherein when no, the estimations or the metrics that the senior management usually wants is not in terms of story points. It's and even from a velocity point of view, they're not
Hmm.
much aware. What they actually look out is no, what was the time spent, no, in terms of the resources and how what was delivered. So how do we approach that particular point? Is there a way where we can actually no associate or say correlate the story points to say hours or man days as such? That's my first question.
Hmm.
And the second question is a little bit with respect to say a little bit of uh, estimations with respect to grooming when we are actually giving story points as well as sprint planning. So this might be an overlap wherein say I've given certain story points, but as we know the entire development team comes from a completely different no, each and everyone has a different task. So the testers will
Hmm.
be doing something, the developers will be doing taking the core sprint goal related activities, and there will be a ux for example a UI UX designer who would be designing the screens.
Hmm.
So when we talk about say there are in a sprint we can take 25 points. Okay,
Hmm.
so for different stories the work for each team member would be different. So
Hmm.
majority of say user story one, which is say 8 points or say 13 story
Hmm.
points,
Hmm.
most of the time will be spent in that. Okay, and it might be given to the testing team quite later.
Hmm.
Same way,
Hmm.
the three story points maybe are not enough for the UI UX design person to finish his
So
quota of
let's
capacity.
do one thing. I think you are making the question very complex. Let me simplify this for you.
Yeah, yeah,
So the dynamics of the team have to be understood very clearly. What is each individual member is capable of delivering.
correct,
Let's say, for example, if you have a small kid, okay, if you give banana, he will he will take 1 hour to eat. Now
correct.
tell me, Omkar, how much time will you take to eat banana? 1 minute?
No,
Your
no,
capacity of eating banana is different, right?
correct,
So
correct.
you have to look back in the past, see what is their individual capacity, accordingly assign the work. Okay,
Uh,
and they will, as it is not about the assignment, it is about picking up the work, right? Generally the understanding is reached within the team when you have the team members, right? So you can always, you will always understand who is more capable of delivering the complex work, who is less capable of delivering the complex work, and what work can be planned for them. After you have done the estimation part, you can always assign the stories or ask the stories to pick as per their preference.
Balram, my actual question is that in that case, actually
Hmm.
the thing is, uh, supposedly according to that there are multiple stories, user stories are being taken, and most of those story points will not be apportioned at the end of the sprint, because the UI UX design person might take 5 user stories,
Hmm.
and we might actually end up completing only 3. So
Okay. Why did you plan for 5?
because the
Right.
capacity in terms
Just
for the,
because, see,
yeah,
just because there is more capacity, you cannot disregard the priority and take as per the capacity, right? Your capacity is your team's delivery that is possible within the sprint,
correct.
right? Now, how do we know if a UI and UX team would take this much amount of time? Let's say if the resource is the team member is part of your team, they would be a part of your planning poker and estimation refinement, right?
Correct.
So then where is the question of missing out? You have done the wrong estimation or wrong calculation during the planning, or you end up over committing and under delivering.
Okay.
You're getting my point. So
Yes,
I
to a
will be
point.
more than happy to discuss offline, Omkar, with you if you
Sure,
want to.
sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my second, the other question, if we can actually correlate hours or mandates, is it a good
See,
practice to do it?
hours, story points should not be, translated into hours. That's the bottom line. But many companies do that, and many companies have actually reached the definition of, one story point equals to 1 day. You take almost all the companies are doing that. So if you even go by that, you are giving 8 hours for one story point, but that is not actual practice,
Yeah,
right?
I just wanted to know whether it's a good practice or not.
No, it is not a good practice. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Balram.
It's not a
Thanks
good
so much.
practice because you know the same banana story which Balram has told. Some person might complete the same task in 6 hours. The other
Correct.
person might complete in 8 or 10 hours. So
Right.
you cannot compare apples with bananas, right?
True.
So that's how that story points versus hours will become vague.
True.
So story points will help us to arrive at the true velocity as well as predictability.
Mhm.
Whereas task level, if you estimate in hours, it will help us how much efforts we are booking. So that's how you need to do that.
For a new person joined in the team, Sharath, so he need to accept someone who have a good command and then continue with his opinion, right? Then
I didn't get you.
I mean, if a
Acha,
new
acha.
if
See,
a new
if I read your lines correctly, usually, yeah, for the new joinees to get adapt to the estimations, people follow this, converting story point hours to story points. Say 8 hours means one story point. So, like that, people uh,
See,
use that method, but
right.
it is not recommended. But as people become more mature now, we need to help them understand the real difference, and we need to get rid of that.
okay, for a
That's right.
newbie joined in the team, so somehow he need to agree with whatever is going on and
No,
continue.
no, 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 Balaganesh, you are not doing the right job as a scrum master. If you allow somehow, if somebody is following a blind practice, this is not a good practice, right? So let that person do what he is capable of delivering. Okay, let that person just follow whatever he is capable of delivering. Then basis his past experience, he will realize what capacity he holds in comparison to others. Then the estimation will start moving to the accuracy from his side. But blindly encouraging someone to follow the practices and norms is also not a good idea. So you
Yeah.
encourage them to bring in their fresh ideas and perspectives. Okay.
Okay, but for the initial days, right, since he is not having any knowledge,
Right.
so that's where he
Ups,
need to, yeah,
better to encourage the trend in the team rather than following
mhm.
one person in the team.
Yeah. If he blends, right, obviously he will give more story points, right, Balram?
I did not get your question, Balganesh.
Since he is not aware of everything like framework, the
Yeah, as a
complete
scrum
NPI
master,
knowledge.
you should educate the person,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And let him observe and see what are the best practices that are happening.
Yeah.
And then he will start picking
Mhm.
up.
Okay, yeah. So obviously, initially it will take more efforts in
Of
terms of.
course, of course, of course. Okay, we took more time to learn ABCDs,
Yeah.
right?
So the team's velocity will drop during that onboarding. And again,
Right,
you need to take that onboarding into your capacity planning as well. So for that particular new person, you are not going to assign anything to him because he's still learning and he's still trying to blend into the system.
right. So
Probably might be shadowing.
Yeah, shadowing, yeah. And again,
right.
while he's shadowing, he's actually affecting the capacity of the person he's shadowing.
Yes, his
So that
capacity is
person,
not considered.
exactly, yeah.
Okay. Well,
Just to add on, there is an option called as join as observer in the planning poker, right? So if you have any new team members, we can ask them to join as observer so that at least they will get to know how the team is doing, how the planning poker, the estimates and the other things
Yeah,
coming up.
right,
yeah,
right,
right.
right.
Yeah, that's a good option. Thanks, Satish.
Yeah, hi, this is Biren
Okay,
here. I have one question. Can I
go
go
ahead,
Yeah,
ahead?
go ahead.
please.
Yeah, hi. No, so I just wanted to know that if team knowingly or unknowingly overestimates the story points, okay, and then delivers as per that only. How to catch that or how to track that?
Okay. So you
You got my point, right?
yeah, I understood. Your team has overestimated. How do you track it? How do you catch hold of it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, right.
So see, if your team is newly formed, it is very difficult to uh, get the understanding that something was overestimated. If it is fairly a seasoned team, you can always refer back to past data, like a similar story, how much effort was put on the similar story in the past. You can take the help of, if you're not a technical generally if you're not a techie guy, and if you want to reach out to your architect or your team member who is a tech lead, you can always brainstorm and have the discussion. Maybe you can pick up the discussions. Okay, I think this story is overestimated. Was there a scope to break it down further, making it into, let's say for example, 8 story point is given to a particular story, right? Was there a scope to slice that story further to make it into 5 and 3? Right, refer back to past stories of similar kind and similar complexity, taking the help of tech lead, and see if tech lead can contribute towards the discussion to avoid such overestimations. Once it happened, it's fine, but repetition can be avoided by catching hold of such story points by referring to past data, right?
Okay. No, no, I understand, but I'm assuming that no, I mean, the question is with background that no team is new. There
Hmm.
is no experienced team member, and
Then
now, yeah, Agile is
hmm.
being now starting. I mean, no, Agile process is being followed now first time in the team or in the group or whatever LOT. Okay, so
Then
in that
here
case,
here is the
yeah,
catch. If the team is new, then definitely uh, if the entire team is new, trust me, overestimation or underestimation will take a backseat. Whatever team is estimating, we will try to keep delivering by with the understanding that we have, because we never have worked with the estimations in the past, right? So you will always let a few sprints to get over, then you start you will have the backup data there from the past sprints to compare back to the previous stories, right? So initially you may not have any scope to catch hold of overestimations there. And maybe Sharad, do you have any other ideas to substantiate further?
Yeah, I go with you. Whatever you're saying, and yeah, when teams are at a very new earlier stages, right? Probably they might be confused in terms of how to estimate and all. That's why, as a Scrum Master, we'll go ahead with the training on how to get to a better estimate and all.
Right,
So initially, whatever they are estimating, we need to accept that, and at the same time, we need to guide them on how to make the better estimation. So that all comes to the maturity levels, yeah, until
Yeah,
team gets stabilized themselves.
yeah. So again, Scrum
okay,
talks about empiricism. So there's nothing to fall back on. So you will
Obviously.
accept what they did first. And then as time goes on, you start stabilizing and you start getting your average velocity and everything else.
Right.
Yes, you are.
Inspect and adapt. Yeah,
Yes,
That's
perfect.
very true. Inspection and adoption. Well, do
Okay.
we have any further questions? I think we are almost closing 1 hour here. Yes. Any further
Any,
questions?
yeah.
No,
Hey,
I had if you permit me. Yeah, so I mean, while I understand that now normally Agile is being proposed to some extent, I say on daily basis. But I mean, if the project is fixed, how to put it into Agile? I mean, that's what I just want to understand because
Wait. I
see
did
in
not
Agile,
get your question. I did not understand your question.
see
Can you please
yeah,
say it again?
so see yeah, so see normally I say that most of the projects are fixed bid projects. Okay. And when we try to execute in an agile manner,
Mhm.
okay, then we are more of in a discovery mode, right? I mean, we take a backlog, we understand, and then we estimate, and then we execute. Okay, but if it is a fixed bid project, okay, then how to
So are you
execute in
saying
agile manner?
are you saying that the requirements are fixed? How do you execute the project in agile fashion? Is it?
Yes,
Are
sort
you
of. I
saying
said it.
so
So see.
let's
When I say fixed, when I
hmm,
say fixed rate, what
hmm,
I mean to say is that
hmm,
you have to take a certain project. Okay, let's say X amount. Okay, that now you have to. I mean, customer is ready to give only say 100,000. Okay, whatever dollars or like. Okay, now you are trying to execute into agile mode. Okay, in the sprint, 2 week sprint, you are trying to deliver. Now
hmm,
you are also trying to discover the requirement, or you are trying to, I will say, extrapolate the backlog, right? I mean, you have backlog at high level,
hmm,
and
hmm.
then you try to refine it. You try to develop understanding, and definition of term, definition of ready, all those things, right?
Okay.
So,
Hmm.
I mean, and as we know that now, because velocity may not be accurate or other, if you start developing the new teams, the task will get spill over, right? And when it
Hmm.
gets spill over, obviously, then that is a cost overrun or the schedule overrun,
So
right?
can you
So
define your fixed? Can you give me the definition of fix when you say fix? Is it
fixed
requirement?
the
Is it the scope? Is it the time? Or is it the budget? What is that you're
budget,
referring to?
budget, it's budget and scope.
Budget. As a Scrum Master, I will not be involved in budgeting part,
No, correct,
right?
but
No, no, it's
So,
not about Balram. It's
no,
not
no,
about budgeting part.
hmm,
When we
yeah,
say fixed bid project, few things are constant,
hmm.
like budget,
This
time,
I understood. So here, these many
deliver
features
everything.
can be delivered with this, fixed scope, is what you're saying,
Right.
yeah.
With
So
right?
this
I'm
fixed
talking about,
amount of
see,
time.
So
correct. So I'm talking
get
about implementation. I'm talking about
right.
implementation. Okay,
So
whereby, yeah, go
so
ahead.
I mean, my thought here on this question is, if you have the product owner in your team, you should always take the priority list from the fixed bit project that you have, and first complete the volume of the amount that is on high priority, then go on to complete, right? Now if something is really fixed, then either you can go with waterfall model, or you can always go with agile. But when you come up with the agile fashion of delivering, you will always see more changing requirements coming up. If something is fixed, you can always take the priority list of items and go on completing them. So what is the question here? I'm not able to understand.
yeah,
Eh, eh,
can you please
eh,
repeat the question because I was interested in knowing that as well.
Right. So
Uh,
if the question is clear,
See, let
answer
me
would be
see.
easier.
Let me.
I
Okay,
feel, sorry, I feel what Omkar is
go,
trying to say is that he has a fixed budget project and he wants to run it in the agile fashion, where the scope is also fixed. So if the
yeah,
scope
right.
is fixed
So I'll give
and
you
the budget is fixed, then
correct.
I would say waterfall would be the best suited.
Correct,
Where,
correct.
Nice.
agile is more on the unknowns.
Unknowns, right,
Yeah, right,
right.
right, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
because
So
the whole objective of Agile Scrum is to be adaptable to change. So that's the reason we slice and deliver in regular sprints so that the customer
no,
gets to
correct.
see, right? And
No,
now
correct. But
if you want to do it a
see,
waterfall model, the changes are going to cost because it's a fixed bid, right? The customer has already paid for a fixed set of requirements. If you ask for a change, that goes as a CR, and the
No,
customer
correct.
will build.
So I see. I'll tell you a very practical scenario. Right now, I'm executing a project. Okay, I mean, so see what happens is that see, I'm into BFSI. Okay, BFSI product company. So what happens is that there is a product. Okay, and business development person will go and sell it to the customer or bank. Okay, and they say this is my product and this is what will cost you. This is your whatever now number of branches or number of transactions or number of whatever. Okay, so I have fixed the budget upfront only. And I
Absolutely.
have done estimation, very high level estimation. I have done. Okay, saying that okay, there will be a 4 interface and 5 reports and those kind of things. Okay, and I have fixed the budget. I have sold it. Customer said okay. Now, if I want to execute this project in a agile manner, okay, then what happens is that I mean, I'm trying to deliver it in a sprint. Okay. Now in sprint, as you know, we are trying to say that okay, this is estimation and this is story points, and this I'll try to execute and then deliver into a one sprint. But if I can't deliver, then I'll take carry forward, right? So in such a case, I mean, since my budget is fixed, if I have maybe say 2 sprints also overrun or extended, then my maybe profitability will go for a toss. Okay, as in because it's a 3 months project or 6 months project, a small project, okay, a small budget. So I mean that's what I'm just trying to understand that how is it a practical situation where for such a project you try to do it in agile manner or you have to only do it in the uh,
You have to switch to time
waterfall
and
method?
material and not do it a fixed bid.
Yeah, so
No,
customer is not ready for
Viren,
TNM.
Yeah,
Viren,
so customer is
let
not
me,
ready for TNM. So what happens is the customer will pay you like say $200, and they will say, okay,
Yeah, right.
you're good to go and deploy
Yeah,
10 as a team size or 20 or 30. It is not the customer's
right.
headache. So end of the
Correct.
day, what happens is when you work in a waterfall model like a fixed bid and try to cap that with an agile scrum, the customer is not getting end of the day, and also what happens is the whole objective is diluted because when you demo even after 2 weeks, when the customer gets to see, right, there will be some changes. It's not that he will say, oh, I'm good, let's go to the next sprint. I mean, that's the whole objective of we doing a sprint review or what we call as a demo towards the end of every sprint. So long story short, if you have to engage with a customer in a fixed bid and do a sprint model, then that's not the right approach. You have to encourage to the customer to move to a Scrum model, or if he's not ready for Scrum, then go for time and material. Because with time and material, the CRs will help him and also you as an organization in terms of revenue. Or else the team will go through a lot of churn. They will end up delivering more, and you will have to pay from your pocket. The customer will not pay it. I hope that
Okay.
answers your
No, so
question.
yeah, no, it answers, but I just want to add one thing that any change will be considered a CR. That is very clear. Okay, that any major change will be considered a CR. That customer will be okay. Only my point is that whatever the defined scope is there, okay, but while delivering that, we may have this kind of, if we go with a story point, then it may spill over and it will cost us money. But fine, I got the answer.
Thank you.
Maybe
Thanks,
just,
Balram.
if I could chime in as well, again, in Agile, in Scrum, it's a complex environment. We don't even know what, there's so many unknown. So even the scope cannot be fixed because there's so many
Okay.
unknown. There's so many unknowns. And that is why we use Scrum in a complex environment. And then there's the
Right.
concept of agile contracts. And I think maybe if you have some time, you could actually Google and check agile contracts. And you know exactly
Okay.
how contracts work in agile. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Got it. Thanks.
That was a good discussion. Thank you for the folks. Thanks to the folks who contributed to the discussion. So, any other question? I hope we have taken all the questions. So, if there
Uh,
are any questions, we can still,
Ram,
share
Balram,
few
couple of
questions.
I have one.
Yeah.
Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, so you said if the team is new, we have to keep 50% of the capacity as a buffer. Can you please explain it again? What does it mean and elaborate that?
So when your team is new, you will not know how much they will be able to deliver, right? So if the work requires around, if the effort or the load is around 30 story points, okay, and if your team's capacity is around let's say 28 story points, just plan the load only up to 14 or 15 story points. Do not completely pack the team, because when the team is new, there will be so many challenges in terms of delivery, understanding, and then bridging the gaps in understanding. So with the new members, we cannot expect the smoother delivery. Therefore, keeping a buffer will safely land you on the safer side to deliver the items that are committed. Otherwise, you will end up spilling over, Piyush.
Yeah, and again, like Balram started the session with capacity versus velocity, right? So we have to be careful in terms of which path we want to choose.
Right.
If you have a new team member in joining, you cannot mix that with the velocity approach, right? So there's food for thought.
Yes. Thank you, Vishwa. Right. Any other questions?
Can I can I ask one more
Balram,
question?
I have.
Yes.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
please go ahead. Okay, so this is Akash. Actually, I just wanted to ask one thing. If any one of you have ever worked with mainframe, because I have worked with other organizations and other Scrum teams where I was able to granularize the user stories in terms of story points. But here in mainframe, what I'm struggling is that looks like pretty much every story the team is estimating at around 8 points. So it's becoming hard for me to keep it very small. So just wanted to see if someone has any idea of handling any mainframe teams and how it is different than the normal Scrum teams.
The answer to this question could be around slicing, how well the team engages with the PO in those refinement sessions, and how you facilitate those conversations in sprint planning. So
Mm-hmm.
slicing could be the answer to your question, unless
Mm-hmm.
uh, the requirements are very clear, the team has understood in terms of what the acceptance criteria are.
Okay, so my pain point is I do not have any PO. So I believe that is the problem.
Then then you may have to collaborate with the team. I mean, it really doesn't make sense. So when you're talking about Scrum, do you mean you operate without a product owner?
Yes, unfortunately, I have to.
And how do you say that the definition of done is met? Who certifies that?
It's the ED, executive director, who is taking care of all the projects.
But that he represents business, right?
Yeah, he's a kind of a proxy, but not involved so much as a PO he should be.
So the approach is Scrum. It's Scrum, but I mean, we do Scrum, but we don't have a product owner.
Exactly. That's the situation I have. Yeah,
That's the challenge. So
we
you
are
should call out.
we
You
are
should call out to
You
the
should call
executive
out. Yeah.
saying, and say that we should take a path that more aligns with the Scrum practices.
Yeah, I'm trying to convince everybody. So yes, that's the struggle I am facing, because it looks like we are running agile under the waterfall blanket. So that's something
No, it
is
will it will
challenging.
it will create very complex situation for you to operate, and the situation will not improve unless you really align with the path of Scrum practices. You have to
Right.
start the discussions to get to the point where you start practicing Scrum. Okay, so
I have
I
one more
think
question. One more
Thank
question.
you.
yes,
Last
yes,
thought.
yes.
Yeah, one
I
last
am
question.
I am going back to my Q&A
Balram,
session
you're
slide.
most wanted.
Huh? No, so my question is related to Kanban. Okay, if I to permit me. So in Kanban, I know it's like to start WIP or done kind of a thing, right? We move this phases. But do we do any estimation over there? I mean, I just wanted to know if anyone can answer. But
Kanban more aligns to operations, so there you measure the lead time and the cycle time. The whole
Right.
objective of doing Kanban is because there are work items that take priority. That could be a production
yeah,
defect. That could be a certain a DevOps activity, like say you do a file posting activity or a certificate renewal, which eventually was not done for some reason. So such stories or work activities cannot wait for 2 weeks until the sprint is done. So that's the whole reason we have a Kanban approach. So when it comes to matrix, right, it's cycle time, lead time, then you have the community flow diagram. So these are the three approaches or the metrics that you need to be on top of when it comes to Kanban. And
Noted.
again, in Kanban, right, there are certain work items which do take priority, but again, that's a story for another day. You can classify those into 4 separate categories.
Class of service, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's altogether a separate discussion on Kanban.
Yes, yes, that will take a different discussion.
When are we having the session on Kanban? Thank you.
Spot on, spot on. Yeah, probably.
That's coming
we'll be
soon.
having-
Sharath, we're holding you responsible.
Sure, definitely. That is why
Thank you.
we have this platform.
Yeah, thank you.
So soon we'll be planning a session on Kanban also, as
Right.
requesting.
We have
So
all
in the
the
interest
industry
of-
experts here. So definitely we'll come back with the session on Kanban too.
Definitely. So with this, I want to thank everyone in the interest of time. Let's call it a day. I want to thank Biren Parekh, I see Idris, sorry, or if I, Idris, sorry, and Biren, everyone, whoever has participated, right? So it was a very good discussion, lot of points we have discussed. And thanks everyone for joining once again, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for
Thank you,
the active
thank you. You're
participation.
doing good job.
Thank
Yeah,
you, everyone.
yeah. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Sharath.
Thanks everyone.
Welcome
Thanks,
everyone.
guys. Bye.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Welcome.
Good night.
Thanks, Vishwa. Bye.
Thank you.